Let's turn our attention back now to the idea of the surplus. Will it survive? And the broader impact of coronavirus on the nation's economy. I caught up with the Chief Executive of the Australia Industry Group, Willox. Willox, thanks so much for your time. First of all, the Treasurer and the Prime Minister stating today that the impact of the coronavirus is broader in its reach than the fires and having a more severe impact economically. Is that your sense of things as well?
Definitely, and that's what's coming through. But we've just seen the start of coronavirus and its impacts on our economy. It sort of started slowly and is now building momentum. We're seeing trade being impacted, education being impacted, services being impacted, travel, transport being impacted. The number of companies who have put absolute travel bans now on is getting bigger and bigger. So that means that global commerce is being impacted. This is going to flow through for a long time to come. Our best guide is SARS. That lasted 9 months. It had a deep impact, and we think this will have a deep, immediate impact on our national economy, but there'll be quite a quick snapback, and there'll be quite a quick recovery because of pent-up demand. Bushfires, for all the attention they received, were quite localised in many ways, but this has a national impact across a range of industries and right across the economy.
But as you point out, there's no end in sight at the moment, and obviously it's pending the severity of the health crisis and whether or not the scientists can basically come up with a cure.
Well, that's right. So we're all waiting. So that's creating uncertainty, and now you're seeing that flow through the stock markets and through the ASX and through the US stock market as well, and right around the globe. And now as you're seeing more and more countries being directly impacted, South Korea and Italy being the most recent, that's impacting on confidence. That flows through the European Union, it flows through North Asia more generally, and that impacts on business sentiment and business confidence. We've seen supply chains being disrupted, down to little things like nuts and bolts not being delivered, and if you don't have nuts and bolts, simple as it is, you can't build your product.
And do you feel that now the surplus is effectively as good as gone?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult for the government to reach a surplus. They may off the back of iron ore price and the like, but with the money that's having to be diverted into bushfire recovery and now the slowdown that's occurring because of the coronavirus, it'll be very difficult to get there. I think the point where the business community is at is we need to rebuild and we need stimulus to get the economy moving again. Post-coronavirus.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I mean that's something that needs to be considered at that point. Yeah. What about something that has emerged the last week or so, Labor's definitive position on emissions reduction as it relates to the longer term, 2050 net zero emissions is their plan. What's your view on that?
Well, we are organisationally supporters of net zero. The key word here is net zero. It's not zero, it's net zero, so no more than we currently have. And why we support that is we believe that the technological advances are so strong that our economy will be nothing like what it is now as it will be in 2050. You couldn't have predicted in 1990 what our economy would look like now. We didn't have Sky News in 1990 and now we all live and die by it in many ways. So look, the world is changing. We think for a whole range of reasons, economically, if we don't push ahead with this, we'll get left behind, we'll get left out, we'll get cut out. Environmentally, it's very important to do. And in terms of technology and energy, we need to get on board with this.
When you say economically we'll be cut out, can you elaborate on that? Well, what are the implications of not getting on board that goal?
Yeah, so we're not saying, and we are not saying, let me stress this, we have to shut down coal or shut down steel. Look at steel, for instance. It's moving heavily into things like carbon capture and storage, hydrogen production of steel, being involved in the development of steel. All of these things are happening within industries at a time. What we're saying by being cut out is the fear. For instance, we're about to negotiate a free trade agreement with the UK and with the EU. The UK has made this, Boris Johnson has made this the year of climate change, and they are hosting the big conference, the COP conference in Glasgow at the end of this year. There's all the signs that they are going to put pressure on us to sign up to measures like net zero 2050 or emissions reduction as part of a free trade agreement. It's almost certain the Europeans will do the same. If we don't go down this path and do it in a sensible, structured, methodical way, we risk being cut out of agreements or being penalised.
And as you alluded to earlier, that 1990 comparison is an interesting one, and I noticed your reference to the smartphone as well, that no one would have been able to predict that. So your argument extends to the idea of modelling over that 30-year period as well, because it's almost, you argue, irrelevant.
Well, exactly. Nobody can tell you what 2050 will look like in terms of the makeup of the economy, how we'll do the economy. But what we do know is that there are more than 70 countries on board this target by 2050. More and more are joining. The pressure on more is going that way. Modelling, is pretty much next to useless when it comes to this. It's about setting the goal, which is what businesses do every day, and then allowing businesses to plot the path. And technology, as the Prime Minister has said, will be a key part of this.
AIG Group Chief Ines Willox, great to see you. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kieran.